This is a big one because you are inspiring in a sense that, and impressive, by the way, that you stay relatively lean in your off season. You make quite, like, from what I've seen, it's like, dude, you look pretty beach lean at like 200 pounds or what, it's pretty amazing. So, and you compete at, what is it, 170?
At 170, yeah.
170. So that's incredible. So tell us what are you doing, and how can someone make that transition to it? Do you think it's a genetic thing where it just where you partition your body fat? Is it how could someone, basically where I'm getting at is off season, so that they're building the most amount of muscle possible within that window of what's available, and not excessively getting fat like you see a lot of natural bodybuilders in the off season get? Is that really necessary, kind of thing?
Sure. So the reason I smile is because I don't feel beach lean. Like people, it's such a weird, like I'm thinking I'm like, I feel a bit bloated, I feel like fat, and people look at me and they're like, no, you're pretty lean. So it's just a funny, like, how your mind plays tricks with you and things. But ultimately, I try and remove that from my mind completely. And what I do in my off seasons and what I'm trying to get better at and what I do with all my clients is, what's the main driver for hypertrophy? It's training. If we don't, if we're not training well, then it doesn't matter how you eat, what you do with your sleep, whatever else you optimize. Like, you need training is the match that lights the fire for muscle growth. You need to be progressively overloading. You need to be doing sufficient volume. You need to be recovering and then moving forward. And obviously everything else feeds into that. Like, if you haven't got good sleep, if your nutrition is off, you're not going to have good training. But you need to be at a body composition where you're going to train well, basically, is what I'd like to think about. So normally it's a range. Maybe it's people, once they've been kind of training for a long period of time, they can normally like know a weight range that they land within. It's like, oh, once I hit whatever it is, 180 pounds, I've got sufficient like body fat on me, and I'm like in a surplus. I'm in a position where I can start hitting some PRs potentially, and I have very good training. My energy's good, my sleep is good, my like all diet fatigue is completely gone. And maybe they push all the way up to like 200 pounds, and that's where like they start hitting the upper end ceiling where they're like, I'm out of breath, my appetite is terrible, it starts impacting my sleep, my training performance. It's all okay, but it's actually, I'm starting to feel a bit lethargic in the gym. So I see that almost as like, okay, we want to stay in this range then. We don't want to diet under where you feel good, because that's unproductive. That's only for stage. We also don't want to mass above this weight. And that's going to look different for everyone. I think a lot of people can probably get higher than I can, where I start feeling not that great. And I can probably get leaner than quite a few people, which is probably why I generally look a bit leaner than a lot of people in my off season. So yeah, for me, I know, and the reason I spoke about 180 to 200, because I'm probably 185 to 195 pounds. And that's like my sweet spot of like 10 pounds, but 5 pounds above that, 5 pounds below, I probably have to go there a little bit to identify that this is my sweet spot. But I know when I go to like 200 pounds, where yeah, you're kind of looking beachly, and I felt like a complete whale up at 200 pounds. But this is what I got, some real severe, like I thought I digestive issues. I wake up like extreme satiety. I don't want to eat. I'm having to force feed. I managed to push up to 205 pounds, but it was horrific. And I felt so much better dropping like 10 pounds off. And it just like, I dropped like 10% of my body weight from that weight super easy. I didn't have any like diet fatigue, and I actually just felt better and better as I dieted down. So I think, and it might be similar to like someone like Alberto Nunez. He's always known as someone who stays a bit leaner in his off season. I don't think the fact that you can, like I could, I used to use that as an excuse to stay leaner, but now I see it as I just actually don't focus on that at all. And I focus on where I can perform the best. And actually I can get a bit fatter than what's comfortable with me and my psychology, but I still perform well. My appetite is still good. So I go there because ultimately that's still driving good training performance. So I think most people want to approach it from a standpoint of try and take what you kind of look like out of the equation. And the saying goes, focus on performance over physique, because at this stage, you're not going on stage. And like the saying goes, or I don't know if it's a saying, but the judges don't care how you look in your off season. They don't give a shit. They only care about what you look like for that like 10 seconds on, no, 10 seconds, for those few seconds on stage.
Right.
So ultimately do what you need to in the off season to perform your best. Because I think there's probably people who are on the other end of the scale to me, where they actually perform better, like, I don't know, maybe 30 pounds above stage weight. Maybe they have to be like, and then their range is like 30 to 40 pounds or 50 pounds above stage weight. then they just have to periodize their way back down to stage a little bit more selectively, where they maybe have to do like a diet before the diet so they get like comparably lean and then they can start. Whereas I could start maybe like just a diet for prep in my off-season shape, potentially,
Gotcha.
depending how far I pushed it. Basically, you want to be nice and aggressive from contest prep to your recovery diet. Once you've hit like that minimum threshold for where you start feeling good, you kind of want to be aggressive up to that point and then slow right down. Because there's no, like, I think you basically want to travel from that A end of contest to B where you start feeling good and productive as basically as quick as possible, because that time is like no man's land. You're not growing muscle, you're just kind of recovering. And obviously there's a time course to recovery as well. It's not just the body fat and you're suddenly healed and you're like back to off-season feelings. But maybe like if you can do it in 4 weeks, 6 weeks, amazing, like that's great. And then but you want to slow down. So it's the people who don't slow down after that, who they carry on this overeating, who get into trouble, where maybe they're gaining like 5% of body weight every month. It's like, do you really need to be gaining that fast to maximize muscle growth? From what we know with the very limited literature we have, but for lots of kind of anecdotal experience and the rate of muscle growth for natural athletes when they're advanced, you don't need to be in that big of a surplus. So unless you're recovering still, I would say you definitely want to slow that down. And what I found to be kind of that middle ground of, I'm pretty damn sure we'll be maximizing every bit of muscle growth we could be, but we're not going so fast that we're just gaining needless amounts of body fat, is 1 to 2% of body weight per month. So that, I just like that as a rule of thumb for most individuals, because like I said, I tend to find that probably is maximizing muscle growth, maybe even on the side of a little bit excess fat gain. But then you could always move down to the 1%. But if you go much lower than 1% of body weight gain per month, I'm like, you could have just like, I don't know, like had some body water shifts and you could suddenly be back where you started. And I've had that in my off seasons before, where I thought, man, I can only gain 1 pound of muscle a year, so I might as well gain as slow as physically possible. And then I'd mass for like 6 months, and then I'd do like a 1 week cut, and I'd be like, oh my God, I'm already lower than, like, I've just lost everything. Like, what did I even do? It's like, well, you just maintained. And yeah, you can grow muscle there, but not very much. So I think committing, I like that 1 to 2%, and I'm fine with people running at the higher rate, because I'm like, I'm pretty confident that we can whip that body fat off quickly with a mini cut. Like, I always think about cycling downhill for fat loss phases, cycling uphill for muscle gain phases. So let's give every bit we can to that muscle gain phase. So yeah, I'd say that's more assertive than some people would say, but I think it's not on the excessive side, at least.